The boy took the trembling woman's hand when everyone else walked away. What he didn't know, she was a mafia boss's mother. And that one simple act of kindness was about to change both their lives forever. The morning sun burned through the narrow streets of Little Italy, casting sharp shadows between vendor stalls that lined both sides of Mulberry Street. The market was alive, voices shouting prices, hands exchanging money, the smell of fresh fish mixing with roasted coffee and ripe tomatoes. Nobody noticed the old woman at first. She stood near the corner of a fruit stand, her silver hair falling loose from what had once been a neat bun. Her floral dress hung wrinkled on her thin frame, and her hands, those trembling spotted hands, clutched the fabric near her chest as if holding onto something invisible. Her eyes moved frantically across the crowd, searching for something she couldn't name. "Excuse me," she whispered to a man rushing past with grocery bags. He didn't slow down. "Please. I can't." She reached toward a woman in a business suit. The woman pulled her arm away and quickened her pace, phone pressed to her ear. The old woman's breathing grew faster. The market spun around her, colors bleeding together, voices becoming noise. Where was she? How did she get here? And why couldn't she remember her own address? A teenager bumped into her shoulder. She stumbled backward, catching herself against the fruit stand. Oranges rolled onto the pavement. "Hey, you gonna pay for those?" the vendor barked, but even he didn't approach her. He just waved his hand dismissively and turned to another customer. She was invisible. Worse, she was a problem people stepped around. The old woman's knees weakened. She needed to sit. She needed to think. But every bench was occupied. Every storefront had someone guarding it with suspicious eyes. Her vision blurred with tears she tried to hold back. Then she felt it. A small warm hand slipping gently into hers. She looked down, startled. A boy stood beside her, maybe 8 years old, with messy dark hair and worn sneakers. His brown eyes held no judgment, no fear, just concern. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. His voice barely rose above the market noise, but she heard every word. The old woman's mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then, I don't know where." "It's okay," the boy said. He squeezed her hand lightly. "You can sit down. Come on." He guided her carefully toward a wooden crate outside a closed shop. She sank onto it, her whole body shaking with relief and confusion. The boy crouched in front of her, still holding her hand. "My name's Theo," he said. "What's yours?" She tried to remember. The answer was right there, somewhere in the fog of her mind, but when she reached for it, it slipped away like water through fingers. I don't." Panic rose in her chest again. "That's okay," Theo said quickly. "You don't have to remember right now. Are you thirsty? Or hungry?" The old woman realized her throat was dry, her stomach empty. She nodded. "Wait here," Theo said. "I'll be right back. I promise." He disappeared into the crowd before she could protest. The old woman sat alone on the crate, watching the endless stream of people who still didn't see her. What if the boy didn't come back? What if he was like everyone else, just pretending to care? But 3 minutes later, Theo reappeared, slightly out of breath. He carried a small bottle of water and what looked like a granola bar wrapped in plastic. "The store owner knows my mom," he explained, unscrewing the water cap for her. "He gave these to me when I said it was for someone who needed help." The old woman accepted the water with shaking hands. The first sip felt like life returning to her body. She drank slowly, carefully, while Theo unwrapped the granola bar and broke off a small piece. "Not too fast," he said gently, exactly the way someone must have once taught him. Small bites. As she ate, the fog in her mind shifted slightly. She could feel thoughts moving beneath the surface, important things, dangerous things, but they wouldn't take shape. Only fragments emerged. There was a fountain, she whispered. "I remember. A garden. With roses. White roses." Theo leaned forward, listening carefully. "And a name." Her eyes grew distant. "Dante." Someone named Dante. Is that your son? Theo asked. Or your husband? I don't. I can't. Frustration broke through her voice. Why can't I remember? Theo squeezed her hand again. It's okay. Sometimes my grandma forgets things too. But they come back. They always come back. The old woman looked at this child. This small, kind child who had done what dozens of adults wouldn't. Who had seen her when she was invisible. Why did you stop? She asked. Why did you help me? Theo tilted his head, confused by the question. Because you needed help, he said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. My mom says that's what matters. Not whether someone looks scary or different. Just whether they need help. Tears finally spilled down the old woman's weathered cheeks. Not from fear this time, but from something she couldn't name. Something that felt like being found when she thought she was lost forever. Thank you, she whispered. Theo smiled. Come on. My mom works at the bakery 2 streets over. It's warm there. We can figure out where you live. He helped her stand, keeping her hand steady in his, and led her through the crowd that parted and closed around them without a single person knowing they were watching a mafia boss's mother being saved by an 8-year-old boy. The bakery sat tucked between a laundromat and a family-owned pharmacy, its windows fogged with warmth. A faded sign above the door read Morelli's Bread, in hand-painted letters that had seen better decades. The smell of fresh dough and cinnamon rolled out onto the sidewalk. Theo pushed open the door, a small bell chiming overhead. The old woman hesitated at the threshold, suddenly aware of how she must look. Disheveled, confused, a stranger being brought into someone's workplace by a child. Theo! A woman's voice called from behind the counter. She appeared a moment later, flour dusting her dark hair and apron. Her face was kind but tired, the face of someone who worked long hours to make ends meet. When she saw her son holding the hand of an elderly woman she'd never met, her expression shifted to immediate concern. What happened? Are you all right? I'm fine, Mama, Theo said. But she needs help. She can't remember where she lives. Theo's mother, Maria, came around the counter quickly, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes swept over the old woman, taking in the expensive fabric of the dress despite its wrinkled state, the quality shoes, the pearl earrings that caught the light. Please sit down, Maria said gently, guiding her toward one of 3 small tables near the window. Theo, get some water. The cold one from the back. As Theo ran to the small kitchen behind the bakery, Maria pulled out a chair and helped the old woman settle into it. The warmth of the bakery began to seep into her bones, loosening some of the tension that had gripped her all morning. I'm Maria, the woman said, sitting across from her. You're safe here. Can you tell me your name? The old woman's hands twisted together in her lap. I should know. I should know my own name, her voice cracked with frustration. But it's like trying to grab smoke. Everything is smoke. Theo returned with a glass of cold water and set it carefully on the table. Maria stood and moved to the display case, selecting a piece of still warm focaccia bread. She placed it on a small plate with some olive oil. Eat first, Maria said. Sometimes the mind works better when the body is fed. No rush. The old woman broke off a small piece of bread and dipped it in the olive oil. The taste exploded on her tongue. Rosemary sea salt, something deeply familiar. She closed her eyes. My kitchen, she whispered. Someone used to make bread. Every Sunday morning. The whole house smelled like this. That's good, Maria encouraged. What else do you remember about the house? Big. Very big. Too many rooms, the old woman's brow furrowed. Stone lions. There were stone lions at the gate. And a driveway that curved like she made a sweeping gesture with her hand. Theo and Maria exchanged glances. That sounded like the estates up in the hills, where the wealthy families lived behind iron gates and security cameras. Do you remember any street names? Maria asked. Or the neighborhood? The old woman shook her head, but then stopped. Dante. I remember Dante. He's important. He's your son. Theo offered. Yes. No. I don't. She pressed her fingers to her temples. It hurts when I try to remember. Like pushing against a wall. Maria leaned forward. It's okay. Don't force it. What about the fountain you mentioned to Theo? And the garden? The fountain had angels, the old woman said, her voice becoming distant, dreamy. For angels holding up a bowl. The water. The water caught the sunlight and made rainbows. Dante used to play there when he was small. He'd throw pennies in and make wishes. Her eyes suddenly filled with tears. Where is he? Why isn't he looking for me? The desperation in her voice made Maria's chest tighten. This wasn't just an old woman with memory problems. This was someone's mother. Someone's family. And somewhere someone must be frantic with worry. I'm sure he's looking, Maria said firmly. I'm sure he's doing everything he can to find you. But what if he doesn't? The old woman's voice dropped to a whisper. What if I can't find my way back? What if I disappear and no one ever knows what happened to me? Theo reached across the table and took her hand again, the way he had in the market. You won't disappear. We'll help you find him. Right, Mama? Maria felt torn. She had a business to run, bills that wouldn't pay themselves, and a son to protect. Getting involved in something that might be complicated, maybe even dangerous, given the woman's obvious wealth, wasn't wise. But looking at this frightened old woman, and at her son's earnest, compassionate face, she knew there was only one answer. Right, Maria agreed. We'll help you. The old woman squeezed Theo's hand, and for the first time since waking up confused and lost in the market that morning, she felt something other than terror. She felt hope. Adriana, she said suddenly, her eyes widening. My name is Adriana. Adriana, Maria repeated, smiling. That's a beautiful name. It's nice to meet you, Adriana. Outside the bakery window across the street, a black sedan slowed to a crawl. The driver's eyes fixed on the three figures visible through the fogged glass. A woman, a child, and an elderly lady who matched a description that had been burned into his mind all morning. He picked up his phone and made a call. I think I found her. The safe house was nothing like the movies made it seem. No red velvet chairs or crystal chandeliers. Just a converted warehouse on the industrial edge of the city, with concrete floors, steel beams, and windows covered in newspaper. A single long table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by folding chairs where Dante Moretti's most trusted men sat in heavy silence. But Dante wasn't sitting. He stood at the far end of the room, his back to everyone, staring at a wall covered in maps, photographs, and handwritten notes connected by red string. His suit jacket hung on a chair. His white shirt was wrinkled, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't stopped moving since his mother disappeared 16 hours ago. Tell me again, Dante said, his voice quiet but sharp as a blade. Every detail. From the beginning. Marco, his second in command, shifted uncomfortably. She went to morning mass at St. Anthony's. Same as every Sunday. Her driver waited outside like always. When mass ended, he saw her come out the front door. She stopped to talk to Father Benedetto for a few minutes. Then she walked toward the car. And Dante didn't turn around. And she never reached it. Vincenzo looked down at his phone for maybe 30 seconds. When he looked up, she was gone. Just gone. Dante's hand curled into a fist against the wall. 30 seconds. We've had every man searching since dawn, Marco continued. Checked the hospitals, the police stations, called in favors everywhere. No Jane Does matching her description. No accidents reported. No witnesses. It's like she vanished. People don't vanish. Marco. Dante finally turned around. At 42, he carried the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet. Dark eyes that missed nothing. A face that could have been handsome if it weren't carved with lines of stress and violence. But right now, those eyes showed something his men rarely saw: fear. Someone took her. The Calabrese family, maybe. Or the Russians. They know hitting my mother is the one thing that would. Boss, a younger man named Tony, stood up from his laptop at the side table. We've been monitoring all their communications. Nothing. No chatter about a kidnapping. No ransom demands. No threats. If someone took her as leverage, they're not using it. Dante's jaw clenched. That should have been good news. But somehow it was worse. If this wasn't a calculated attack, then what was it? She could have just wandered off, offered Sal, one of the older soldiers. I mean, with all respect, she's been forgetting things lately. Last month she called you by your father's name twice. Maybe she got confused, Anne. Don't. Dante's voice cut through the room like a whip. Don't you dare suggest my mother is losing her mind. The room fell silent. But the truth sat heavy in Dante's chest. A weight he'd been denying for months. The forgotten appointments. The repeated stories. The way she'd stand in doorways sometimes, looking lost in her own home. He'd seen it happening and he'd done nothing. Told himself it was just age. Just stress. Just temporary. He'd been lying to himself because the truth was unbearable. His mother, the woman who'd raised him alone after his father's murder, who'd protected him through gang wars and federal investigations, who'd been the one constant in his violent, chaotic life, she was slipping away. And this time no amount of power or money or fear could stop it. We keep searching, Dante said finally, forcing steel back into his voice. I want every street camera checked. Every subway station. Every. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered immediately. Yes. Mr. Moretti, the voice was male, nervous. This is Gino. I work surveillance for your operations in Little Italy. I know who you are. Talk. I was reviewing morning footage from the market district. I think I saw your mother, sir. Dante's heart stopped. Where? Mulberry Street. Around 9:30 this morning. She looked confused. Lost. People were walking past her like she wasn't there. Send me the footage. Now Dante was already moving toward the door, snapping his fingers at Marco to follow. There's something else. Sir Gino's voice dropped. She wasn't alone. A kid approached her. Maybe 8-9 years old. He took her hand and led her away. Dante stopped. A kid? Yes, sir. I ran facial recognition but got nothing. He's not in any of our systems. Just a boy. He seemed like he was trying to help her. For a moment Dante couldn't speak. In his world, kindness didn't exist without motive. People didn't help strangers. Especially not someone who looked like a homeless woman wandering the market. But a child. Where did they go? That's what I'm working on now. I'm pulling footage from surrounding blocks. Should have a trail in the next hour. You have 20 minutes. Dante ended the call and looked at Marco. Get everyone mobilized. My mother is alive. She's in Little Italy somewhere with a child. You want us to grab the kid? Marco asked. You protect that kid, Dante said, his voice hard. If someone laid a finger on my mother, I'll burn this city down. But if that boy helped her? If he showed her kindness when everyone else walked away? He pulled on his jacket, his expression unreadable. Then he's under my protection. Anyone touches him, they answer to me. Understood. Understood, boss. Dante headed for the door, but paused at the threshold. And Marco? When we find her. When we find my mother. His voice cracked just slightly. She better be okay. The afternoon sun hung lower now, stretching shadows across the cracked pavement as Theo and Adriana made their slow way through the quieter side streets. Maria had needed to stay at the bakery. The afternoon rush was coming, but she'd made Theo promise to take Adriana straight home and stay there until she finished her shift. We'll figure this out tonight, Maria had said, pressing some money into Theo's hand for a taxi if they needed it. Call me if anything feels wrong. Anything at all. But Theo's home was only 6 blocks away, and the day was nice. Walking seemed easier than trying to explain Adriana's situation to a cab driver who might not want to help. Adriana moved slowly, one hand gripping Theo's, the other trailing along the brick walls they passed. She'd been quiet since leaving the bakery, her eyes distant, as if she were walking through two worlds at once, the real streets of Little Italy, and some other place only she could see. "Are you tired?" Theo asked. "We can rest if you need to." "No," Adriana said softly. "I feel like if I stop moving I'll forget how to start again. Does that make sense?" "I think so." Theo adjusted his grip on her hand. "My mom says sometimes you just have to keep going, even when you're tired. She works 12 hours at the bakery some days." "Your mother is very kind. And very brave." Adriana's voice carried a weight that made her sound older than ancient. "Raising a child alone in this city. It's not easy." Theo glanced up at her, surprised. "How did you know she's alone?" "I saw it in her eyes. The worry. The strength. I know what it looks like." Adriana smiled sadly. "I raised my son alone too after his father died. Every day was a choice between fear and courage. Your mother chooses courage." They turned onto Baxter Street, where the buildings grew older and closer together. Laundry hung from fire escapes above them. A cat watched from a windowsill. Theo knew every crack in these sidewalks, every shortcut and hiding spot from years of playing here. That's why he noticed when things felt wrong. The black car was parked at the corner, engine running. Not unusual by itself, people idled on these streets all the time. But the two men leaning against the building across from it were watching. Not looking at phones or talking to each other. Just watching. Theo's stomach tightened. His mother's warnings echoed in his head. Trust your instincts. If something feels bad, it probably is bad. Don't be polite. Be safe. "Adriana," he said quietly, "we're going to turn here." "But isn't your home?" "This way is better." Theo guided her left, down a narrower street he usually avoided because it meant walking past the old Rossini building where teenagers sometimes hung out smoking. But right now, teenagers felt safer than those watching men. Adriana didn't question him. She followed, her hand tightening slightly in his. Theo risked a glance over his shoulder. The two men had pushed off from the wall. They were following. His heart hammered. Why would anyone follow them? Adriana was just a lost old woman. He was just a kid. Unless she wasn't just a lost old woman. Those pearl earrings. That expensive dress. The way she'd mentioned a house with stone lions and too many rooms. What if Adriana was someone important? What if she was rich and these men wanted to hurt her? Or take her? "Theo." Adriana's voice wavered. "Something's wrong. I can feel it. Just stay close to me." Theo tried to sound braver than he felt. His mind raced through the streets ahead. The bridge over the old canal was 2 blocks away. If they could cross it, they'd reach the neighborhood where Mrs. Chan ran her grocery store. She knew Theo. She'd help. They walked faster. Adriana struggled to keep up, her breathing becoming labored, but she didn't complain. Behind them, the footsteps grew closer. "Hey kid," one of the men called out. "Stop right there. We just want to talk." Theo didn't stop. Didn't turn around. His mother had taught him that too. Anyone who actually needs to talk to you won't chase you down a street. "Kid, we're not going to hurt you. We just need the old lady. She belongs to someone who's looking for her." Belongs to someone. The words made Theo's skin crawl. People didn't belong to other people. Not like that. "Please," Adriana whispered, her voice urgent but confused. "Please, I don't want to go with them. I don't know them. I don't." "You won't." Theo squeezed her hand. "I promise." The bridge appeared ahead. Its iron railings rusted but solid. Beyond it, Theo could see the start of Chinatown, where the streets grew crowded even in the afternoon. Safety in numbers. They just had to make it across. But when they reached the bridge entrance, Theo's hope crumbled. A third man stood at the other end, blocking their path. He was bigger than the other two, with a scar running down his left cheek. He wasn't trying to hide his intentions. He just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. The footsteps behind them stopped. Theo turned. The first two men were 10 feet back, watching. Not rushing. Not grabbing. Just waiting. They were trapped. Adriana's hand trembled in Theo's. He could feel her pulse racing through her thin fingers. But when he looked up at her face, she wasn't looking at the men. She was looking at him, trusting him, believing somehow that this 8-year-old boy could protect her. Theo took a deep breath and made a decision. "Run when I tell you to," he whispered. "What?" "No, I can't leave. When I tell you, run toward those shops." He pointed to the cluster of stores beyond the bridge. "Scream for help. Someone will come." "But you." "Trust me," Theo said, using the same gentle voice he'd used with her all day. "Please." The men started moving closer. The industrial dock warehouse smelled of salt water and diesel fuel. Rusted shipping containers lined the perimeter like steel dominoes, creating a maze of shadows where Dante's men conducted business the city pretended not to see. Today, though, the warehouse served a different purpose. Dante stood before a collection of monitors that his tech crew had assembled in less than an hour. 6 screens showed different angles of Mulberry Street, frozen on frames from that morning. On the center screen, grainy but unmistakable, was his mother. She looked so small, so fragile, standing in the middle of the market crowd like a ghost, transparent and ignored. Dante's hands clenched at his sides as he watched people stream past her. A man in a suit glanced her way and kept walking. A woman with a stroller actually veered around her, as if she were an obstacle instead of a human being. "Animals," Dante muttered. "Every single one of them." Boss Gino, the surveillance tech, tapped a keyboard. "Here's where the kid enters the frame." The timestamp read 9:47 a.m. From the left side of the screen, a small figure appeared, dark hair, worn jacket, moving with purpose through the crowd. The boy stopped when he reached Adriana. Even in the grainy footage, Dante could see the moment of connection. The boy's hand reaching out. His mother accepting it. "Who is he?" Dante asked. "Still working on it. The facial recognition isn't getting hits because he's never been photographed by police or in any official database. He's clean. Not even a school photo in the public systems." Gino pulled up another screen. "But I tracked him through 3 more cameras. He takes her to a bakery on Hester Street. Morelli's Bread." Morelli. Marco wrote the name down. "I know that place. Small operation. The owner's a widow, I think. Keeps to herself." "Check it out," Dante ordered. Quietly. "I don't want her scared. If my mother's there." "She's not," Gino interrupted, then immediately looked apologetic for cutting off his boss. "Sorry, sir. But I kept following the trail. They left the bakery 40 minutes ago. The boy and your mother. They're on foot, heading east." Dante's jaw tightened. On foot. His mother, who got tired walking from the car to the house, was being led through the city streets by a child. Current location. "That's where we have a problem." Gino's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up a map with red dots marking camera positions. "There's a dead zone around Baxter Street. City never updated the infrastructure there. Last confirmed sighting was here." He pointed, heading toward the old bridge crossing. "That was 12 minutes ago." 12 minutes. In 12 minutes, anything could happen. "Sir," another voice spoke up from the back of the warehouse. Luca, one of the younger soldiers, stepped forward with his phone pressed to his ear. His face was pale. "We've got a situation." Dante turned. "What situation?" "Tommy and Rico. The guys we sent to canvass Baxter Street." Luca swallowed hard. "They spotted your mother. They're trying to intercept." For a moment, Dante couldn't process the words. Then ice flooded his veins. "You sent men to intercept my mother?" "No, boss, not like that. They're trying to help to bring her home safe." "Did I give the order to approach her?" Dante's voice dropped to a deadly quiet. "Did I say grab her off the street?" "No, sir, but..." "But what?" Dante crossed the warehouse in 4 long strides, getting close enough that Luca stepped back. "My mother is confused. Frightened. And you sent armed men to intercept her? Do you have any idea what that will do to her? Boss, they're not armed. They're just... Call them off. Now. Luca raised his phone, but before he could speak, another voice crackled through. Luca, we've got a complication. There are other guys here. Not ours. Dante grabbed the phone from Luca's hand. Who? Don't know yet, Mr. Moretti. Tommy's voice came through tense. 3 guys moving in on the old woman and the kid. We're trying to wait. Wait, they're boxing them in. This is a grab. Dante's blood turned to ice, then fire. Where are you? Exactly where? The canal bridge. East side. Sir, I think these guys are Calabrese crew. I recognize one from. The sound of shouting erupted through the phone. A child scream. Then the line went dead. The warehouse fell into terrible silence. Dante stood frozen for 1 heartbeat. 2. In his mind he saw his mother's face from the footage. Lost, frightened, invisible. He saw a boy's small hand reaching out to help her when no one else would. And he saw men. His men, enemy men, it didn't matter, descending on them both. Everyone in cars. Now Dante's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Marco, you're with me. Gino, send that location to my phone. Luca. He turned to the younger man who still looked terrified. You call Tommy back. You tell him if anyone lays 1 finger on that child, I will personally make sure they regret being born. Clear? Yes, sir. And someone call ahead to St. Anthony's. Tell Father Benedetto to be ready. My mother might need him. Dante headed for the door, pulling his jacket on. And someone tell me who the hell the Calabrese family thinks they are. Making a move on my mother. Boss, Marco jogged to keep up as they burst out into the afternoon light. What if they get there first? What if they take her before we arrive? Dante didn't answer immediately. His black Mercedes waited at the curb, engine already running. He slid into the driver's seat. He'd drive himself today, needed to feel the control, and grip the steering wheel. Then God help them, he said quietly. Because I won't. The bridge stretched before them like a rusted spine, its iron framework groaning softly in the wind. Below, the old canal ran murky and shallow, choked with debris and shopping carts from decades of neglect. Theo had crossed this bridge 100 times. Racing friends, taking shortcuts, never thinking twice about it. Now it felt like a trap. The man with the scar hadn't moved from the far end. Behind them, the 2 others advanced slowly, deliberately, like wolves who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. Adriana's breathing came in short, panicked gasps. It's okay. One of the men behind them called out, his voice falsely friendly. Nobody's gonna hurt you, lady. We're here to take you home. I don't know you, Adriana said, her voice stronger than Theo expected. I don't know any of you. Your son sent us. Dante. Remember? He's worried sick about you. At the name Dante, Adriana's grip on Theo's hand tightened painfully. Something flickered across her face, recognition maybe or fear. Dante wouldn't. He wouldn't send men like you. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sure he would. Come on now. Let's not make this hard. She doesn't want to go with you, Theo said, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. His heart was hammering so hard he thought it might break through his ribs, but his mother's lessons ran deep. Be brave when you need to be. Stand up when it matters. Kid, this isn't your business. The second man stepped closer. You did a good thing helping the old lady. But it's time for the grown-ups to take over. No, Theo moved slightly, positioning himself between Adriana and the approaching men. He was small. He knew that. They could push him aside like a curtain. But maybe, just maybe, he could buy enough time for someone to notice. For help to come. The man with the scar finally spoke from the far end of the bridge, his voice a low rumble. Enough games. Marco grabbed the woman. Let the kid go. Marco, the one who'd been speaking, sighed and started forward. Theo's mind raced. The canal was too far to jump. The railings were too high to climb quickly. And he couldn't fight 3 grown men. But he could scream. Help! Theo's voice cracked across the empty air. Someone help us. They're trying to take her. Shut that kid up, the scarred man growled. Marco lunged forward, reaching for Adriana. Theo did the only thing he could think of. He dropped low and grabbed the man's leg, wrapping both arms around it like his life depended on it. Probably did. Marco stumbled, cursing. Little, get off me. Run! Theo screamed at Adriana. Run now! But Adriana didn't run. She stood frozen, torn between self-preservation and the child who'd shown her nothing but kindness. I can't leave you. The second man circled around, trying to get past Theo. But the bridge was narrow, and Theo was making himself as much of an obstacle as an 8-year-old could. He kicked, twisted, held on with everything he had. Marco shook his leg violently. Theo's grip slipped. He hit the bridge deck hard, tasting blood where he'd bitten his tongue. Through watering eyes, he saw Marco reach for Adriana. Then he heard the cars. Not one car. Several. The sound of engines roaring closer, tires squealing. The men on the bridge heard it too. They froze, heads turning toward the street. Company, the scarred man said, his voice tight. We need to move. Now. What about? Now. Marco grabbed Adriana's arm, yanking her toward the far end of the bridge. She cried out, struggling against him, but she was too weak, too confused. Theo scrambled to his feet, his knee screaming in pain. Let her go. He launched himself at Marco again, grabbing the man's jacket. Marco spun, his patience finally snapping. His free hand came around in a backhand that caught Theo across the face. The world exploded in stars and pain. Theo fell backward, hitting the railing, the metal edge driving into his spine. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard Adriana screaming his name. Or maybe it was someone else screaming. The sounds blurred together. Car doors slamming, men shouting, footsteps pounding on pavement. Police! Someone yelled. But it didn't sound like police. It sounded like something darker, more dangerous. Marco released Adriana and ran. The other two men scattered like rats, disappearing into the maze of alleys that spiderwebbed through the neighborhood. The scarred man vaulted over the bridge railing, dropping to the canal bank below with a splash. Adriana collapsed to her knees beside Theo, her hands hovering over him, afraid to touch, afraid she'd hurt him more. Oh God, the boy, someone help the boy. Footsteps thundered onto the bridge. Heavy boots. Multiple people. Theo tried to focus, but his vision swam. He saw dark suits, grim faces, men who looked like they'd stepped out of a movie about gangsters. Don't touch him. One of them barked into a phone. Get the medic here. Now. Another knelt beside Adriana, his voice gentle despite his scarred knuckles and cold eyes. Mrs. Moretti. It's Tommy. I work for your son. You're safe now. The boy, Adriana sobbed. He protected me. They hit him. He's just a child. We got him, ma'am. We got both of you. Tommy looked up at his companion. Where's the boss? As if in answer, another car screeched to a halt at the bridge entrance. A door opened, and even through his fading consciousness, Theo heard the footsteps that followed, measured, controlled, belonging to someone who didn't run because he didn't have to. Someone who made everyone else move out of his way. Theo's eyes started to close. Adriana's voice called to him from far away. And somewhere above him, a new voice spoke, low, dangerous, and carrying a weight that made the air itself feel heavier. Who did this? Theo woke to the smell of antiseptic and the feeling of something cool against his cheek. His eyes fluttered open. He was lying on a bench near the bridge, his head resting on someone's folded jacket. A man in a white shirt was checking his pupils with a small flashlight. Easy, son. Don't move too fast. The man, a medic, Theo realized, had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. You took a good hit. Might have a mild concussion. Can you tell me your name? Theo, his voice came out raspy. Where's Adriana? The elderly lady? She's right here. Theo turned his head slowly because it hurt and saw her. Adriana sat on a second bench a few feet away, wrapped in someone's coat despite the warm afternoon. Her face was tear-streaked, her hands twisting together in her lap. When she saw him looking, relief flooded her features. Theo! Oh, thank God, she started to rise, but a hand on her shoulder gently kept her seated. The hand belonged to a man Theo had never seen before, but somehow immediately understood. He stood beside Adriana like a statue carved from stone and shadows, tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive suit that seemed wrong for the rundown neighborhood. His face was hard, unreadable, but his eyes were exactly like Adriana's. "The boy needs rest, Mama," the man said softly. The word Mama was so gentle it seemed impossible coming from someone who looked that dangerous. "Let the doctor finish. Mama." So this was Dante. "I need to see him," Adriana insisted, her voice cracking. "He saved me. He's just a child and he saved me and they hurt him." I know. Dante's jaw tightened. "We'll talk about that. But first, let Dr. Caruso do his job." The medic, Dr. Caruso, gave Theo a reassuring smile. "You're going to be fine, young man. Bruised ribs, split lip, and probably a headache for a few days. But nothing broken. You're tougher than you look." Theo wasn't sure about that. His whole body ached, and every breath felt like it scraped something raw inside his chest. But he was alive. And so was Adriana. Can I sit up?" Slowly, Dr. Caruso helped him, and the world tilted only a little before settling back into place. Now Theo could see the bridge clearly. It was surrounded by black cars, 5 of them, parked at angles that blocked both ends. Men in suits stood at intervals, some talking into phones, others just watching. The whole scene felt surreal, like he'd woken up inside a television show. "Theo!" Adriana's voice pulled his attention back. She'd stood up despite Dante's protests and was moving toward him. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry they hurt you because of me." "It's not your fault," Theo said immediately. "You didn't do anything wrong." "He's right." Dante moved with his mother, staying close but not touching her, as if afraid she might break. "This is on the men who did this. Not you. Not the boy." Up close, Dante was even more intimidating. But when he looked at his mother, something in his expression softened. Not much, but enough for Theo to see the person beneath the armor. "Are you really her son?" Theo asked. "I am." Dante's eyes shifted to him, assessing. "And you're the one who helped her when no one else would." It wasn't a question, but Theo nodded anyway. "Thank you," Dante said. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Theo understand these weren't words this man said often. "I owe you a debt I can never repay. I did what anyone should do," Theo said. "But they didn't." Dante's voice hardened. "Dozens of people saw her. Walked right past her. You were the only one who stopped." Adriana's hand found Theo's and she squeezed gently. "You reminded me that kindness still exists in this world. That not everyone has forgotten how to see people." Mama. Dante's voice changed, became urgent. "We need to get you home. You need to rest and—" "No." Adriana's response was sharp, sudden. She pulled away from both of them, her eyes suddenly wild. "No, I can't go back there. That house. It's wrong. Everything there is wrong." "What are you talking about?" Dante moved closer, concerned. "You love that house. You picked out every—" "The fountain," Adriana interrupted. Her breathing quickened. "There was a fountain. With angels. For angels. Where did it go, Dante? What happened to the fountain?" Dante exchanged a glance with one of his men. "Mama, that fountain hasn't existed for 20 years. Dad had it removed when you remodeled the—" "No." Adriana shook her head violently. "No, it was there. Today. I saw it today. I was there. You couldn't have been. The garden where it stood was demolished. There's a parking structure there now." But Adriana wasn't listening. She turned away from the bridge, looking toward the east where the sun cast long shadows between buildings. Her eyes fixed on something in the distance. A point beyond the alleys and streets that Theo couldn't identify. There, she whispered. It's still there. I can feel it. Mama, you're confused. The medication, the stress. I am not confused, Adriana's voice cut like glass. I may forget names. I may forget days. But I remember that garden. I remember my Dante playing there, throwing pennies, making wishes. I remember every rose bush, every stone, every... Her voice broke. I remember. Silence fell over the bridge. Even the suited men had stopped talking, watching this moment unfold. Where? Dante asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Where is this garden you remember? Adriana pointed with a trembling hand. There. Past the old warehouse. Past the street where the church used to be. In the place where we were happy before everything changed. Dante followed her finger. Theo saw something flicker across his face, recognition maybe. Or memory. The community garden ruins, one of Dante's men said quietly. The old rosewood plot. That's been abandoned for 30 years, another added. But Dante was already moving. Take her there. The community garden ruins sat tucked behind a chain-link fence, forgotten by the city and reclaimed by nature. Weeds pushed through cracked concrete pathways. Wooden trellises collapsed under the weight of wild vines. And in the center, barely visible beneath decades of grime and ivy, stood the fountain, for stone angels holding up a bowl that no longer held water, only dead leaves and bird nests. Adriana stood before it, tears streaming silently down her face. I told you, she whispered. I told you it was real. Dante stood a few paces behind her, his expression unreadable. Theo watched from near the gate, flanked by two of Dante's men who'd been ordered to keep him safe. Dr. Caruso hovered nearby, medical bag in hand, still concerned about Theo's concussion. This is where we lived, Adriana said, her voice distant. Before you became. Before everything changed. This was our neighborhood. Our garden. You were 6 years old when your father brought you here to plant tomatoes. You hated getting dirt under your fingernails. Dante said nothing. But Theo could see his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. Every Sunday we'd come here after church, Adriana continued. You'd run straight to this fountain and throw pennies. Do you remember what you always wished for? Mama. You wished for a puppy. Every single time. 52 Sundays, 52 pennies, 52 wishes for a puppy we couldn't afford. Adriana turned to face her son. And then your father died and we moved away and you stopped wishing for things. You stopped being a child. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush stone. I remember, Dante said finally, his voice rough. I remember the pennies. Adriana reached out and cupped his face with both hands. My boy. My sweet boy. What happened to you? Before Dante could answer, one of his men, Tommy, spoke urgently into his phone, then jogged over. Boss, we've got a problem. Big 1 inch. Dante's expression hardened instantly, the vulnerability vanishing like it had never existed. What problem? The guys who grabbed Mrs. Moretti on the bridge? They weren't Calabrese. They were independent contractors. Hired by... Tommy hesitated, glancing at Adriana and Theo. Maybe we should discuss this privately. Say it. Hired by Vincent Calabrese himself. His crew just pulled up outside the garden. 8 cars. Maybe 20 men. The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. Dante's hand moved to his jacket, to where a gun probably rested. Theo realized with ice in his stomach. How did they know we were here? Dante's voice was deadly calm. Must have had someone watching the bridge. Boss, they're not here to talk. Vincent's out front and he's asking for you. By name. Dante looked at his mother, then at Theo. Calculation flickered across his face. Math that weighed violence against protection. Revenge against innocence. Get my mother and the boy to the back exit. Now. There is no back exit, Tommy said. This place is boxed in. Chain link on 3 sides, buildings on the 4th. We're in a kill box. Then make an exit. Cut the fence. Drive through it if you have to. Just get them out. Adriana's voice was sharp. What's happening? Who are these people? Bad people, Mama. People I need to handle. But you need to leave. Right now. I'm not leaving you. Mama, please. The sound of car doors slamming echoed from the street beyond the fence. Voices called out, men positioning themselves. Theo's heart hammered. This was wrong. This was so far beyond anything he understood. I want my mom, he said, his voice small. I want to go home. Dante crossed to him in 3 strides, kneeling down to eye level. Up close, Theo could see the exhaustion in the man's face, the fear hidden behind cold control. I'm going to get you home, Dante said. I promise. But I need you to be brave a little longer. Can you do that? Theo wanted to say no, wanted to cry, wanted to run. But he looked at Adriana standing by her fountain, confused and frightened, and he remembered taking her hand in the market when everyone else had walked away. Okay, he whispered. Good man. Dante stood, then called out to his men. Circle formation around the fountain. Nobody fires unless I give the order. This ends without bloodshed if possible. And if it's not possible? Tommy asked. Dante's expression turned to granite. Then it ends anyway. The gate chain rattled. Then a voice called out, smooth, mocking, carrying an accent Theo couldn't place. Dante Moretti, I know you're in there. Come out and let's talk like civilized men. That's Vincent, Tommy muttered. He's playing games. Dante walked toward the gate, his men forming a protective barrier behind him. I'm here, Vincent. What do you want? What I want. Vincent Calabrese appeared on the other side of the fence, a man in his 50s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Theo's entire apartment. I want to understand why your mother was wandering my streets like a lost dog. I want to understand why my men tried to help her, and your men attacked them. And I want to understand, his voice hardened, why you think you can operate in my territory without consequences. Your territory? Dante's laugh was cold. Little Italy belongs to no one, Vincent. It's neutral ground. Has been for 20 years. Not anymore. Times change. Power shifts. And your family's power has been declining, shall we say. Vincent's smile was sharp as a knife. Especially now that everyone knows your mother has Alzheimer's. That she's wandering the streets. That you can't even protect your own blood. Adriana gasped behind them. Dante's entire body went rigid. That's not true, Adriana said, her voice shaking. I'm not. I don't have. But the certainty in her voice cracked. And Theo saw the terrible moment when she realized that maybe possibly Vincent was right. The word hung in the air like poison. Alzheimer's. Theo didn't fully understand what it meant, but he understood enough. The forgetting, the confusion, the fear in Adriana's eyes as she looked at her son. Is that true? She whispered. Dante, is that what's wrong with me? Dante didn't turn around. His eyes stayed locked on Vincent through the chain-link fence. We're not having this conversation here. But we should have it somewhere, Vincent said, his tone falsely sympathetic. It's cruel, really, keeping the poor woman in the dark about her own condition. She deserves to know why she can't remember where she lives. Why she ended up lost in a market, dependent on a child's charity. Shut your mouth, Dante said, his voice low and dangerous. Or what? You'll start a war? Here. Now. Vincent gestured to the rusted garden around them. In front of your confused mother and that innocent boy? We both know you won't. Because for all your reputation, Dante Moretti, you're not your father. You have a conscience. A weakness. Theo saw Dante's hand twitch toward his jacket again. The men around them tensed, hands moving to their own weapons. The air felt electric, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. Boss, Tommy whispered urgently. We need to defuse this. Now. But it was Adriana who moved first. She walked forward, pushing past Dante's protective stance, moving toward the fence where Vincent stood. Dante reached for her arm, but she shook him off with surprising strength. You, she said to Vincent, her voice steady now, cutting through the tension. You think you know my son? You think you understand what he is? Vincent's smile faltered slightly. Mrs. Moretti, I meant no disrespect to you. My concern is genuine. Your concern is calculated, Adriana interrupted. I may forget where I put my keys. I may forget what day it is. But I remember men like you. I've known them all my life. Men who smile while sharpening knives. Men who use words like respect and honor while planning betrayal. Vincent's expression hardened. Careful, old woman. You're not as protected as you think. And you're not as smart as you think. Adriana moved closer to the fence. You came here with 20 men because you wanted a confrontation. You wanted to provoke my son into making a mistake. You wanted blood spilled in front of witnesses so you could claim self-defense and take what you think should be yours. Tommy and the other men exchanged glances. Even Dante looked surprised. But here's what you didn't count on, Adriana continued, her voice growing stronger. You didn't count on me. On my presence here with a child, making your entire plan impossible. Because if you start shooting now, what are you? A man who killed an old woman with Alzheimer's and an 8-year-old boy who tried to help her. That's not power, Vincent. That's monstrosity. And even in your world, there are lines you can't cross without consequences. The silence that followed was absolute. Vincent's jaw clenched. His men shifted uncomfortably, because Adriana was right and everyone knew it. So here's what's going to happen, Adriana said. You're going to get back in your cars. You're going to leave this place. And you're going to pretend this confrontation never happened. Because the alternative is you become the man who murdered a sick old woman and a child. And that story will spread faster than you can contain it. Every family in this city, including your own, will turn against you. Vincent stared at her, his calculated composure cracking. You think you can threaten me? I'm not threatening you. I'm educating you. Adriana's smile was thin but genuine. I may not remember what I had for breakfast, but I remember how this world works. I remember that reputation is everything. And right now you're seconds away from destroying yours forever. For a long moment no one moved. Vincent's hand twitched and Theo's heart stopped. But then Vincent stepped back from the fence. This isn't over, Moretti, he said, his voice tight with controlled rage. Yes, Dante said quietly, finally speaking. It is. My mother just gave you an exit. I suggest you take it while it's still available. Vincent's eyes blazed, but he was trapped and he knew it. He turned to his men. Move out. Boss. One of them questioned. I said move out. Vincent's composure finally shattered. He stormed back toward his car, his men following with confused glances back at the garden. They waited in silence as engines started, as cars pulled away, as the sound of Vincent's convoy faded into the city's background noise. Only when the last car disappeared did Dante's men lower their weapons. Tommy exhaled loudly. Holy hell. Mrs. Moretti, you just saved our lives. One of the other men finished. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. But Adriana wasn't listening. The strength that had filled her moments ago drained away like water. Her knees buckled. Dante caught her before she could fall. Mama, he said urgently. Mama, I've got you. I'm tired, Dante, she whispered. I'm so tired. And I'm scared. Am I really? Is it really Alzheimer's? Dante held her close, and for the first time since Theo had seen him, the dangerous man cracked. His voice broke. Yes, Mama. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I should have. It's okay, Adriana touched his face. It's okay, my boy. At least now I know why the fog won't lift. Theo watched them, this powerful man and his fading mother, and felt tears on his own cheeks. Dr. Caruso moved forward, offering assistance, but Dante waved him off gently. Then Adriana turned, still in her son's arms, and looked at Theo. Come here, sweet boy, she said softly. Theo crossed the broken garden, past the men with guns, past the fountain with its silent angels. When he reached them, Adriana took his hand. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me when I was invisible." The sun had begun its descent, painting the abandoned garden in shades of amber and gold. Adriana sat on the edge of the fountain, Dr. Caruso checking her blood pressure while she protested weakly that she was fine. Dante's men had spread out, some making calls, others standing guard, all of them processing what they'd just witnessed. Dante stood apart from everyone, his back to the group, staring at the angels atop the fountain. Theo watched him from where he sat on a crumbling stone bench, wondering what the man was thinking, wondering if he was angry or sad, or something else entirely. Finally, Dante turned. His eyes found Theo and he walked over slowly, deliberately. When he reached the bench, he didn't tower over the boy. Instead, he lowered himself down until he was kneeling on one knee, bringing himself to Theo's eye level. Up close in the dying light, Dante looked different. Less like the dangerous man from the bridge, more like someone carrying a weight too heavy to bear alone. "Theo," Dante said quietly, "that's your name, right?" "Yes, sir." "Don't call me sir. I'm just Dante." He paused, seeming to search for words. "I need to understand something. When those men came after you and my mother on the bridge, when they told you to walk away, that it wasn't your problem, why didn't you?" Theo thought about it. "Because she needed help. A lot of people need help. You can't help everyone." "No," Theo agreed. "But I could help her." Dante's expression flickered, something painful crossing his features. "You're 8 years old. You weigh maybe 60 pounds. You saw 3 grown men, and you still put yourself between them and my mother. Do you understand how easily you could have died?" Theo's hands twisted in his lap. "I was scared. I know you were. I saw your face on the bridge. You were terrified. But you did it anyway." Dante leaned forward slightly. "Why? Tell me the truth. Was it because you knew who she was? Because you thought there'd be a reward?" "I didn't know who she was," Theo said honestly. "I just knew she was lost and scared and everyone was walking past her like she wasn't there. Like she didn't matter. But she did matter. To you." "Why?" Theo struggled to put it into words. "My mom says. She says people aren't supposed to be invisible. That everyone matters, even if they're poor or sick or different. She says the world gets mean when we stop seeing each other." Dante closed his eyes briefly, as if the words had physically struck him. When he opened them again, they were glistening. "Your mother is a wise woman," he said, his voice rough. "And she raised a son braver than most of my trained men." "I'm not brave," Theo protested. "I was crying. I thought they were going to—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Bravery isn't the absence of fear," Dante said. "It's doing the right thing despite it. And you," his voice caught. "You protected what I couldn't. My own mother. The most important person in my world. And I wasn't there." "You came," Theo said. "You came as fast as you could. Not fast enough. She was on that bridge, scared and confused, and a child had to defend her because her own son failed." Dante's hands clenched into fists. "Do you know what that feels like? To know that an 8-year-old boy has more courage than you." "But you have lots of courage," Theo said, confused. "You came to the bridge. You stood up to those other men. You. I have weapons. Money. Power. Men who follow my orders." Dante shook his head. "But you? You had nothing but a good heart. And somehow that was enough." Theo didn't know what to say to that. So he said what felt true. "Your mom is really nice. I'm glad I could help her." Dante laughed then. A broken, genuine sound. "Nice. Yes. She is nice. She's the only good thing that ever came from my family. The only pure thing in a world of..." He trailed off, seeming to remember he was talking to a child. "She deserves better than what's happening to her. Better than this disease that's stealing her away piece by piece." "Dr. Caruso said there's medicine," Theo offered. "That can help slow it down." "Medicine?" Yes, Dante's expression hardened with determination. The best doctors. The best care. Whatever it takes, however much it costs. She'll have everything. I think she just wants you, Theo said quietly. Dante went very still. What? At the fountain. When she was remembering. She kept talking about you as a little boy. About when you were happy together. I think Theo hesitated, worried he might be saying too much. I think maybe she misses that. Who you used to be. The silence that followed felt enormous. Dante stared at him and Theo couldn't read the expression on his face. Anger, pain, realization, all of it mixed together. You're right, Dante finally whispered. You're absolutely right. He stood then slowly, and Theo thought the conversation was over. But instead, Dante reached into his jacket, not for a weapon this time but for his wallet. He pulled out a card and handed it to Theo. This has my private number. If you or your mother ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. Medical bills, rent, education, protection. Whatever it is, I'll handle it. No questions asked. You understand? I don't want money, Theo said. I just wanted to help. I know. That's exactly why you're getting my number. Dante's expression softened. Because people like you are rare. And people like me owe people like you everything. He placed his hand on Theo's shoulder, gently, carefully, as if Theo were made of glass. You gave me back my mother, Dante said. And you reminded me that somewhere, buried under everything I've become, there's still the boy who threw pennies in that fountain. The boy who wished for simple things. Did you ever get your puppy? Theo asked. Dante smiled, sad but genuine. No. But maybe that's a wish I can finally make come true. 1 month later. The garden didn't look like the same place. Where weeds had choked the pathways, smooth stone now guided visitors through carefully planned sections. Where collapsed trellises had rotted, new wooden structures stood strong, already thick with climbing roses, white ones just like Adriana had remembered. The fountain had been restored, its 4 angels scrubbed clean and gleaming in the autumn sunlight, water flowing again for the first time in 30 years. A brass plaque near the entrance read, "The Adriana Moretti Community Garden, a place of peace and remembrance." Theo stood at the gate, his hand in his mother's, staring at the transformation. He'd watched the construction from a distance over the past weeks, the workers arriving early each morning, the materials being delivered, the garden slowly coming back to life. But Dante had asked them to wait until today, until it was complete, before visiting. It's beautiful, Maria breathed. She'd been skeptical when Dante had first approached her at the bakery, offering thanks and promises. People like Dante Moretti didn't just appear in your life without consequences. But he'd been nothing but respectful, nothing but genuine. And now seeing this. Come on, Theo said, pulling her forward. Adriana's waiting for us. They found her on a bench near the fountain, wearing a soft blue cardigan and a peaceful smile. Dr. Caruso sat nearby, ever present but unobtrusive. When Adriana saw Theo, her whole face lit up. There's my brave boy. She opened her arms and Theo ran to her, letting himself be enveloped in a hug that smelled like lavender and safety. Maria approached more cautiously. Over the past month, she and Adriana had spoken several times, always supervised, always with Dr. Caruso present. Adriana had good days and bad days. Today seemed like a good one. Maria, how wonderful to see you. Adriana reached out and squeezed her hand. And thank you for the bread you sent yesterday. It reminded me of my mother's recipe. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Maria sat on the bench beside her. The garden is incredible. Dante must have worked very hard. He did. Adriana's gaze drifted to the fountain. Every evening after his work, he'd come here. He'd supervise the construction, make sure every detail was right. Sometimes I'd find him just sitting here at night, staring at the angels. Remembering. Remembering what? Theo asked. Who he used to be. Who he could still become. Adriana turned to him, her eyes clear and present. You did that, you know. You gave him back something he thought he'd lost forever. Theo felt his cheeks warm. I didn't do anything special. You did everything special. Adriana cupped his face gently. You saw me. You helped me. And you showed my son that kindness isn't weakness. That there's still light in this dark world. The sound of footsteps on the stone path made them all turn. Dante approached, dressed more casually than Theo had ever seen him. Dark jeans, a simple shirt, no tie. He looked younger somehow, less burdened. Ladies. Theo, he nodded to each of them. I'm glad you could come for the opening. Opening? Maria asked. The garden is public now, Dante explained. Anyone from the neighborhood can use it. Plant vegetables, hold gatherings, let their children play. I've hired groundskeepers to maintain it, but it belongs to the community. Maria studied him carefully. That's very generous. It's practical. Dante's expression was difficult to read. My family took a lot from this neighborhood over the years. Maybe it's time we gave something back. He moved to sit on the fountain's edge, trailing his fingers through the water. I've been thinking about legacies lately, about what we leave behind when we're gone. My father left fear. Respect born from terror. Is that really something to be proud of? Dante, Adriana started, but he shook his head gently. It's okay, Mama. I'm not criticizing him. I'm just questioning, wondering if there's another way. He looked at Theo. A better way. There is, Theo said simply. My mom always says there is. Your mother is right, Dante smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. Which is why I wanted to tell you both. I've made some changes. To my business, to my priorities. I'm stepping back from certain operations, focusing on legitimate investments, property development, community initiatives. Maria's eyebrows rose. That's quite a shift. It's necessary. Dante's voice was firm. My mother doesn't have much time left. The Alzheimer's is progressing. Dr. Caruso says we have maybe 2 years, possibly 5 if we're lucky. I'm not spending whatever time remains by being the person who disappoints her. The person she doesn't recognize, not just because of the disease, but because I've become unrecognizable. Adriana's eyes filled with tears. My boy, my sweet boy, you were never unrecognizable to me. Maybe not to you. Dante stood and walked to her, kneeling down as he had with Theo on the bridge. But I was to myself. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. Someone Dad would be proud of, but someone the 6-year-old throwing pennies would be terrified of. He pulled something from his pocket, a shiny new penny. He pressed it into her palm. Make a wish, Mama. Like we used to. Adriana clutched the penny, tears spilling down her cheeks. I wish for my Dante to be happy, to find peace, to remember that he's more than the darkness that raised him. That's 3 wishes. Dante said softly. Then they'll have to share 1 penny, she smiled through her tears, then turned to the fountain. With surprising strength, she stood and walked to its edge. She closed her eyes, whispered something Theo couldn't hear, and tossed the penny into the water. It landed with a soft plink, sending ripples across the surface. What did you really wish for? Theo asked. Adriana looked at her son, at this man who was trying so hard to change, and smiled. I wished that the boy who threw pennies never truly went away. That he was just hiding, waiting for someone to remind him he existed. Dante swallowed hard. When he spoke, his voice was thick. He's still here, Mama. Thanks to you. And thanks to Theo. He's still here. 3 months later. The bakery gleamed under new lighting that made the bread displays look like artwork. Fresh paint brightened the walls. A new espresso machine, top of the line, sat behind the counter, imported from Italy. The 3 small tables by the window had been replaced with 6 comfortable ones, and there was actual seating in the back now, where customers could linger over coffee and pastries. Maria wiped down the counter, still not quite believing the transformation. When the anonymous investor had approached her lawyer with the offer, complete renovation, new equipment, forgiveness of her outstanding debts, she'd been terrified. Nothing came free in this neighborhood. There was always a catch. But 3 months later there'd been no demands. No favors requested. No men in suits showing up to collect. Just a thriving business and the ability to finally breathe without the constant weight of bills crushing her chest. She knew who was behind it, of course. The lawyer's careful words hadn't hidden the truth. But Dante had kept his distance, honoring some unspoken agreement that she and Theo should live their lives without the shadow of his world falling over them. The bell above the door chimed. Theo burst in, backpack bouncing, his face flushed with excitement. "Mama, guess what? I got an A on my science project. Mrs. Henderson said it was the best one in the whole class." Maria came around the counter and pulled him into a hug. "That's wonderful, baby. I'm so proud of you. And look." He dug into his backpack, producing a folder. "The guidance counselor gave me these forms. She said with my grades I could apply for the gifted program at the magnet school. There's even scholarship information." Maria took the papers, her heart swelling and breaking at the same time. The magnet school. She dreamed of Theo going there, getting opportunities she'd never had. But the application fees alone were more than she could. She stopped, looked at the papers more carefully. Several of the fees had already been marked as waived. A handwritten note at the bottom read, "All students from participating community programs are eligible for full fee waivers and supplemental funding." Participating community programs. Maria knew exactly which program that meant. The after-school tutoring initiative that had started at the Adriana Moretti Community Garden 2 months ago. The one Theo had been attending 3 days a week. "Can I do it, Mama? Can I apply?" Maria looked at her son's hopeful face and felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes, baby. Yes, you can apply." Theo hooped and spun around, nearly knocking over a display of biscotti. Maria laughed, steadying it, and sent him to do his homework at one of the back tables. As the afternoon stretched into early evening, as customers came and went, Maria's mind wandered to the garden, to Adriana, who spent most of her good days there now, tending to the roses and feeding the birds, to Dr. Caruso and the team of nurses who cared for her around the clock, never intrusive, always respectful, giving her dignity even as the disease stole more of her memories. And to Dante, who came every evening without fail, sitting with his mother in the fading light, talking to her even when she didn't remember who he was. The sun was setting when Theo and Maria finally locked up the bakery and walked the familiar route to the garden. They'd fallen into this routine, stopping by several times a week, sharing dinner with Adriana when she felt up to it, simply sitting together in companionable silence when she didn't. Today they found her by the roses, her fingers trailing over the white petals. Dante sat on the nearby bench, watching her with an expression of profound sadness and love. "Adriana!" Theo called out, and she turned, her face lighting up with recognition. "Theo! And Maria!" She hurried over, moving slower than she used to but still steady. "I've been waiting for you. The roses bloomed today. Look how beautiful they are." "They're lovely," Maria agreed, accepting Adriana's hand. Dante stood and nodded to them. Over the past months, he'd become less intimidating in Maria's eyes. Not less dangerous, she wasn't naive but more human. More real. "I was just telling Mama about the new community center plans," Dante said. "Breaking ground next spring. After-school programs, job training, health services. All free to neighborhood residents." "More of your anonymous investments?" Maria asked, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Someone's got to invest in this neighborhood," Dante replied. "Might as well be someone who understands what it needs." Theo had already settled beside Adriana, telling her about his science project. She listened with rapt attention, asking questions, celebrating his success. On her good days, she was entirely present. On her bad days, she sometimes called him by Dante's name, believing he was her son as a child. Today was a good day. "She's happy," Maria observed quietly to Dante. "Despite everything, she's happy. She is." Dante's voice was soft. "These past few months with her, Really with her. No distractions, no excuses, they've been the best of my life. And the hardest? Knowing each conversation might be the last one where she knows me. She'll always know you, Maria said. Maybe not your name or your face. But she'll know your love. That doesn't disappear. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then, thank you. For letting Theo be part of her life. For not running when you realized who I was. You're not who I thought you were, Maria admitted. Or maybe you are, but you're also more than that. You're a man trying to do better. That's worth something. It's worth everything. Dante watched as Adriana carefully picked a white rose and tucked it behind Theo's ear, both of them laughing. That boy saved her. And by saving her, he saved me. The evening deepened around them, the garden lights flickering on one by one. Somewhere in the distance, the city hummed with its usual chaos, sirens and music and voices calling out in a dozen languages. But here, in this small pocket of peace, there was only the sound of water flowing from the fountain, roses rustling in the breeze, and a woman laughing with a child who'd shown her kindness when the world had turned away. Dante stood apart, watching but not intruding, his expensive suit replaced by ordinary clothes, his dangerous reputation tempered by the gentleness in his eyes. He'd built an empire on fear, but he was learning to build something else now, something quieter, more lasting. A legacy of light instead of shadows. And it had all started with an 8-year-old boy who'd simply taken the hand of a lost old woman and refused to let go.